For ethnically speaking, we talk about the issues that affect our community, whether they're good, bad, or heartbreaking. And this week, the last two stood out: bad and heartbreaking in the loss of Chadwick Boseman. He is most well known for being an actor, but he was more than that. He was a voice. He was someone who dedicated, who uplifted, who empowered his community in everything that he did, from showing Thurgood Marshall to Jackie Robinson to James Brown, and of course to T'Challa, our king in Black Panther. The loss of him to his battle of colon cancer is a hard loss for the industry, for his fans, but most of all for his family. So here at Ethnically Speaking, from all of us on the team, in front of the camera and behind, we wish his family well. We're sorry for your loss, and we will never forget what he has contributed to the world.
So one person's culture or lifestyle takes over the other person a little bit more, and so sometimes what you'll find is in the interrelationship.
Sophie's laughing because she's that person.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm no, because she's that person. So what
you are trying to get me divorced out here.
No, Sophie, we're not trying.
I'm Luanda Yasmin.
I'm Anissa.
And I'm Sophie Hannah, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you to episode 12 of Ethnically Speaking. If this is your very first time joining us, then we want to say we're happy that you're here and welcome to the family. But if you've been a ride or die fan with us from the beginning, then you have probably noticed that something is different on your YouTube today. And that is because our wonderful Linda E., our ambassador of enjoyment, is working her magic on another project. So we wish her well, but you still have us three smart, curious, and highly melanated, opinionated women representing the United Kingdom. And we are going to be talking about everything and anything that affects our communities, from current affairs to pop culture and everything in between. Now, we promise to still keep it 100% real with you 100% of the time. So forget tiptoeing around issues and technically speaking, because today we're ethnically speaking. And first up is Anissa. What do you have to talk to us about today, my love?
Okay, guys, I am coming in a little bit hot and heavy today. So this morning. Okay, so it's come up quite a lot, especially during lockdown, and especially with everything that's been going on just with the racial injustices in the world. But I kind of thought I'd bring the question to you ladies. Why do you think that mental health is such a taboo subject in the Black community? And what do you think we can do to help ensure that people feel more able to speak about it openly and get the access to the help that they need?
I could talk about this all day. I feel so passionate about mental health in the Black community. Honestly, I do. So you're going to have to shut me up on this one, ladies. But I think one of the things that I've seen a lot of Black people say is that, I don't talk about my business. I don't talk about that. I don't talk about that. And I think that mindset is literally killing us. When you see that Black men are 17 times more likely to have a mental health condition than their white counterparts, when you see that Black women are more likely to be diagnosed with mental health than white women, you start to think this silence that some of us want to have and say that it's, it's secrecy or privacy is killing us. We need to be opening up and talking about it. And I think one of the things that we could be doing is just normalizing it by having the conversations, like talking about, I'm not feeling right. I don't feel very well in my mind. I don't feel at peace. Just to normalize talking about your mental health like we would, I've got an ache in my arm or I need to go get my tooth fixed. So I think that's a start, but there's still so much more we could be doing.
I think I agree with you, because I think we're so used to talking about our physical health, and we're so comfortable talking about our physical health, but we don't give our mental health that same courtesy. Whereas, like you said, if I broke my arm, I would be encouraged to go to the doctor, and then the doctor would give me tools to aid my recovery. But the same thing happens, but when you have issues with your mental health, you can go to the doctor and they will give you tools to aid your recovery. And I think the issue is, within this society, people who have less emotions or people who express their emotions less are seen as being strong. And that type of mentality convinces us that people who suffer with mental health issues are then weak or crazy. And so I think there's this idea, there's this myth that we need to debunk about people with mental health issues being the lesser capable people in our society, because I don't think that's true. And we also need to remember that, you know, humans are mind, body, and soul. All of those things need to be in alignment. Like, all of those things are connected. If one thing is off, then everything is off. And our minds are connected to our bodies, which is why, you know, if we feel guilty, we feel it in our stomach. And if you're scared, you can feel your heart racing because our minds and our bodies are connected. And we just need to give our mental health as much conversation and as much attention as we do our physical health.
I think I definitely agree with what you're saying. I feel like there is almost two factors at work with it being taboo. Like, one, like you said, because being seen as, to say like you have an issue is to be seen as a little bit weaker in society. But I also think, now this is just my own personal experience, I think for me, especially growing up as a child, therapy was seen as something that was like a sexy luxury for the rich whites. And let me explain why I mean that. When my first introduction to therapy, I remember I was a child and I was watching Girlfriends, that was a show, and Joan had started going to therapy for the issues that she was having with her best friend Tony, and her hair was falling out, blah, blah, blah. And she came back and she was saying to like her friends, oh guys, I've been at therapy, and their responses, of course this is scripted, but their responses were like, oh, we don't do that, we're black and we're white, blah blah. They'd made Joan to be like really crazy, the idea that she's going to therapy because she's having this emotional problem. And so it was kind of like, okay, maybe we don't do that, maybe it's just the whites. And then as I watched more and more TV shows, it was always like it was almost like it was like a thing of status. Like, always the rich, sexy whites were always like, me and my therapist, we did this, and my therapist, and it was like, okay, you have a Gucci handbag and a therapist. And so that was what it was like to me. Like, it was a status thing, and it was only for rich whites who I thought, okay, their problems don't really seem that bad, so I don't understand why they're going to a therapist. So I always thought, well, I can't see myself in that because I'm not rich and I'm not white, so therapy probably isn't a thing for me. So that's not how I'm going to kind of handle my problems, if you will. And then it was the same factor of the thing of, then when I heard people in conversation outside of the TV around me talking about therapy, it was usually to say that person's crazy, that person's mad, that person's this. So I had two factors at work of seeing it on TV with the rich whites, and then everyone in my community is basically telling me that, okay, if you go to therapy, you're crazy. So it was those two factors at play made me think, okay, then why would I need therapy? So I guess I was one of the people in the beginning, especially when I was younger, not understanding why people went to therapy, didn't really think it was something that worked or that helped for people. And I had to grow up and understand, you know, not that it's the same, but similar. I took psychology at A-level and just started to understand how the mind works and how it can be, you know, not healthy and that kind of thing. And so that was when my eyes opened. But that my eyes opened because I got access to the knowledge to understand it. And I think some people in the black community either don't have the access to that information or they choose not to access it. So that it's kind of like, that person's crazy. Like, therapy is just so to them. Yeah.
I think there's also just a lot of misunderstanding of trauma as well and how it affects people. Because as you were saying, Lwanda, if my arm was broken, you can see that visibly. Something is wrong, something is not working correctly. But I think sometimes in the black community, there's a misunderstanding of trauma and how it can affect you. So you might have had this thing that's happened to you. You've been in an abusive relationship, or your father wasn't around, or you used to see your mum hitting your dad, and you feel like, I'm fine, I'm strong, I'm getting on with it. But you don't realize that it affects all your relationships. And that's why you snap about things instantly. And that's why you can't seem to get along with men. And why you decide that, you know, I don't want to date black men because there's something like, there are all these things that you might not understand that might be affecting your life. And you're like, because, well, I don't see it affecting me. I'm working. I can, you know, have friends, then it isn't an issue. But therapy can really help you to break down the reasons why you do things and why certain patterns are probably showing themselves over and over again in your family, because generational things that you're passing down is a real thing.
Real thing.
That generational trauma.
Do you think some Black people feel like they wouldn't want to go to therapy because they feel like the therapist wouldn't be able to relate to like what they're going through?
Yes.
Because I remember I used to listen to Breakfast Club and Charlamagne used to be like, you know, he didn't start going to therapy until he had a Black therapist because he couldn't believe that anybody outside of being Black could understand his experience. And so I always wondered if that's been like, would it, if you were going to therapy and your therapist wasn't Black, would that be a thing that, like, are you conscious about thinking about to have a Black therapist, or you wouldn't mind?
I think it's a very valid reason. And actually, if we look at the statistics, this is also something that makes Black people scared to go and get help because I think, Sophie, you mentioned Black men are like 17 times more likely to suffer from mental health issues, but only half of them are actually going to pursue getting any help. And like I said, in terms of the statistics attached to it, mental health staff are more likely to see Black mental health patients as aggressive, even though there's no proof as to why we would be more aggressive than any other race. Black mental health staff are 44% more likely to detain a Black person, and if you're Black, you're 3 times more likely to get sent to a hospital. And sometimes there was a report that I read that talked about how when Black people come for help, sometimes they're not referred to therapists and things like that. Sometimes they're referred to like the criminal justice system. So you can even like just get yourself into a really, really bad situation. And these things are petrifying. I mean, there was a woman, and I don't want to get her story wrong, but her name is Sarah Reed, so everyone else can research it themselves. But there was a woman who actually her baby died, and she suffered from mental health issues since that day because she had to take the baby's dead body herself, which should have never have happened.
Oh my gosh.
And there was an episode that she was having a couple of years later, and she essentially died in the custody of people who should have been helping her because she was treated like a criminal and not a mental health patient. So I understand completely people's reservations when they want to actually help themselves, but they're like, am I going to just get myself worse off than I started?
Yeah, and I think that's why, if you can, like, I know we're talking about solutions as well, but if you can, like, try and get a Black therapist or someone who is from a cultural background, because they will be able to understand certain things without you having to go in depth. Like, I've had therapy before, and I'm very proud to have had therapy and to have been able to talk about things that were going on in my life and affecting the way that I was dealing with things. But most of my therapists were white, and it wasn't an issue for me, but I hadn't even considered having a Black therapist. And when I spoke to one, she was just talking about there's certain things that make Black people feel more comfortable. So when you talk about, you know, my family used to drag me to church every day of the week and twice on Sundays. They're like, if you're Black, you have an understanding. You're kind of like, oh, okay, I automatically understand kind of like the household you were brought up in. Or, you know, when my mum gave me beats, and then my friend had a white therapist, and they were like, do you think you were physically abused? Do you think we need to talk about that? And she was just like,
I don't want to laugh.
No. They were like,
I know, me too.
With your mum? She was just like, she was just like, no, I respect my mum for it. I understand it. And just things like that you don't need to over talk. And if you can't get a Black therapist, then we need to be giving racial sensitivity training to white therapists, because they still make up the massive majority. And if they don't know how to speak to anyone apart from their own culture, like, that's not a luxury that we get as Black people. We know how to speak to people from our culture, from white culture, from other, like, we know how to do this.
It's because we have to learn to be relatable. We have to learn to take everybody else's experiences and relate it into ours, which is the most craziest thing for me, that everybody else doesn't have it. And just what you were saying, Sophie, just to touch on that, I was reading, and I think maybe it was an article I saw on Healthline, and they were basically saying that Black men, I can't remember the percentage, so I can't quote you the exact number, are more likely to be misdiagnosed or overdiagnosed with schizophrenia when it could be other mental health issues. And that's the whole thing. It's like, as you said about your friend, she went and she told the therapist X, and the therapist got Y, and it was like, are you not listening to what's being said, or you're not really doing? And that's where culture and race really play a part of it. But what I also read, which I thought was quite interesting, was I can't remember it either, but they were talking about that slaves weren't, the idea that Blacks and slaves in America having depression or anxiety wasn't a thing, because they thought that their minds weren't sophisticated enough for them to have such, to experience such complexities. So it was almost pardoned off. And I think that was that was a behavior that then kind of resurfaced the idea of, well, we're black, we're strong, we're powerful, we're tough, so we can't have that kind of weakness because we were kind of told, well, you can't have that weakness because of whatever reason. But it's now reimagined itself in the black community as we can't have it because we're strong, you know. And I thought that was interesting and a bit wild.
But I think to add on to that, Anissa, I think I read that as well. It was in McLeanhistory.com. But it wasn't just what you're saying in terms of we haven't had that. I think also it means that we underplay what we have. So you might be like, I've just got stress. You're like, no, you've probably got anxiety or depression. You know your uncle's always been a bit crazy. It's just like, well, no, maybe he's got bipolar. Like sometimes there's other things going on and we will downplay it to say it's not as serious as it is. But if someone is schizophrenic, or if somebody is probably, I would say, on the higher end of the mental health spectrum and they have something that is more noticeable, then people are like, oh, fine, they need help, but I can't get along with anybody in my family. I have to change jobs every 6 months because no one can ever work with me. And we think that, oh, that's not something that needs help. That too is something that you need to speak to somebody about, because that is, again, probably not a mental health, but there is an issue going on that you need to talk about.
You turn me into a bobblehead. I'm just like, yes. I
think me too.
I just agree.
I think we're living in a time now where there are so many charities out there now. So there's Black Mind Matters UK, there's Blam UK, there's Black LGBTQIA plus therapy fund.
Better get organizing, girl.
Girl, I'm trying. I'm reciting the whole alphabet on that one. But there are a lot of places out there, and I read that in an independent article, and I know we always put up the link, but you can go on there and see different things that are there to help people within the Black community. And one of the things that I hate to say, but I think I have to say, is that you have to be really persistent. Because when I realized that something wasn't right in my life, like I have an eating disorder, or had an eating disorder, and it was something I was diagnosed with like seven years ago. So I've been dealing with it for a while, and it's a lot better than it was. But when I first went to the doctor, I was a few sizes smaller, and the doctor was like, you look fine, there isn't an issue. And I was just like, there is an issue, and I'm not leaving until you give me a referral. I was like, I'm not leaving. Something is wrong.
Whoa.
And I really had to fight for him to really take me seriously. And it wasn't until, this makes me emotional, it wasn't until he said, okay, fine, get on the scales, let me weigh you. And I burst into tears, and I was like, I'll do anything, I'll answer any question, but please don't make me weigh myself. And then he was just like, oh crap, there is something wrong here. So he took everything down and he promised he'd refer me. And then 2-3 weeks later, a month later, I still hadn't heard anything. So I went back, and this is the time when I was working. I work from home now. I was working in an office, and I had to take days off work. I had to take holiday to go back to him and say, look, you promised me a referral. You need to refer me. Something is not right. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. I was on holiday and this and that. And I know people who
put down your mojito and get back to work, sir. What are you talking about?
I knew
get your assistant to do it.
Exactly. I knew another girl who said she went to the doctor for the same thing, and she was like, they never did the referral, and she never had the guts to go back and follow it up. So you have to be, and it's not fair to say, but when you're of Black or ethnic minority, you have to be really persistent when you're going to get help, because sometimes they might not take you seriously, and you have to demand the help that they give to other people as a given.
100%, Sophie. I'm so sorry that you had to experience that, like, one, first
for
of all,
real.
But, and second of all, it's just another, like, point proving case. It's a whole different subject, but the idea of, you know, Black women, especially in the medical healthcare system, were not taken seriously about anything. When we're giving birth, when we have eating disorders, about anything, we are not taken seriously. And it's just like, that just really upsets me.
Just to go on the back of what you just said, Anissa, there's actually been a couple of studies with existing doctors and then also medical students, and the majority of them felt that Black women were just stronger than most people. And so Sophie going to that doctor's really like, no, she's okay. Like, and you probably don't address your subconscious bias, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking Black women are strong, like she's fine. And it's and until you had to physically show him that you were upset, he wasn't taking you seriously. And a lot of the time, that's where we get so messed up in health, because people think that we can handle more pain. Oh, actually, to correct myself, that's what the statistics said, that most of the students thought that Black women and Black people could handle more pain because we're just stronger, but we're stronger out of necessity and not by choice. Like we would love to be lots of different types of ways, but 100%. We don't get that option. We don't get that luxury.
I don't take strong as a compliment.
Yeah, me either.
I agree with you, Anissa.
I'm not
strong. I don't want to say if anyone is watching.
I'm not.
If anyone is watching, like, there is light on the other side of the tunnel when it comes to therapy and help. Like, you have to put in the work, but you can get better. And I think that's something that I found out when I went to therapy. My first question was like, is this something I have to suffer with forever? And they were just like, things can get better. And I want people to know that, because yeah, a lot of people, you might get deterred, you might feel like it's not for you, but just keep going, keep trying, reach out to different services, be persistent, speak to people in your circles, like, see what's out there, because there is no reason why you should be struggling with something for your entire life.
Yeah, and
people don't. We shouldn't either.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to add on to what Sophie's saying as well. I can only speak for kind of what I'm seeing, but what I've been seeing lately within the last year is like, especially on social media with young Blacks, especially in England, that they are really making an effort to take in consideration to mental health, and it's a topic, it's a conversation that people are now talking about compared to the older generation and our parents. So I'm really proud that this is something that we're speaking about. So yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like just knowing that the older generation, they did the best that they could with what they had. We have more information now, we have more of the services, and we need to make use of them. But I wanted to talk to you ladies about something else within the Black community and in Britain. And I wanted to know, do you think that in Britain we still have an issue with interracial relationships? And if you are going to date someone outside of your race, does that mean that you're compromising your Black card or your Blackness?
Anissa's creasing straight away, so I'm interested to know what you have to say. But I think that, like, asking whether there's still an issue with interracial relationships in Britain is kind of like asking if we still have a issue with racism in Britain. And I think that, you know what I mean? Like, you can't have one without the other. So I think that for every person on the planet, no matter where you are in the world, race plays a factor into your life. So it's impossible for it not to play a factor into your relationship. But it is possible for you to have a healthy interracial relationship. The issue that I find is that the interracial relationships that are most celebrated within pop culture are the ones that aren't healthy. They're the ones that involve fetishization and designer babies and trends and things like that. And it's more to do with like the look of it, and you know what I mean? It's more to do with the fashion of it all.
Yeah.
But I think those kind of people in those situations are problematic, whether they're single or whether they're in a relationship. So for me, it doesn't really matter, because you're going to be like bad both ways, I think. But in terms of interracial relationships that are healthy, you can I don't think you always have to compromise your Blackness if you're someone who is Black and is dating someone who isn't, because I think everyone deserves to just find love where it's reciprocated and to experience that. But I think, I think too many things. Anissa, tell me what you think. Because I could keep talking about it for a while.
I was following.
We love to hear it, girl. We love to hear it.
I was following. I was listening. Okay. Because there's two parts to this question, so this feels like this went up. Okay, do I think that Britain still has a problem with interracial relationships? I want to say yes. And I'll say yes with an asterisk. Because I'll say, I don't think Britain has a problem with interracial relationships if the woman in the relationship is like the default, if she's white. That's what I personally think. I think they have an issue, or there's more of an issue when the woman is Black. And the reason why I just say that is when I think about like celebrity couples in the UK and things like that, if I even merely take simple stuff like Love Island, the couples where one counterpart is Black, that is so celebrated, is usually the Black man. So, for example, we've got Luke T and Shawnice, like, everybody goes crazy, and then they do the dances on the TikTok, and we will lose our mind, la, la, la. And it's do you know what I mean? It's so exciting. But then you have, and this might be completely different, But then when I was looking at, well, what interracial couples do we have in Britain that are of high status and the woman is of colour? So I was really thinking about it. I thought about Thandie Newton and her husband, but then, you know, Thandie's like a global actress, so Britain doesn't really keep up with her. And then my mind drew back to Meghan and Harry. They slated Meghan all up and down through the press. I remember when I first found out they got engaged, the title I read was Mixed Race, was the first 2 words I thought was Mixed Race, American actress engaged to Harry. As soon as I saw that, I said, what kind of agenda is going on here? And so I think the interracial relationship, I don't know why, but for me, it's celebrated a bit more if the man is black, if the man is black, and then, or if the man is of color and then the woman is white, versus the woman being of color. And I think that's because, once again, we're not sexy, we're not, you know, we're not the desired, we're not the default desired. So that's why, for me, it's like that. I know Luanda jumping in, but I'm just going to finish my point.
Jump in there, I'm coming after you, Luanda, because she's got a lot to say.
Sorry, that once again, needs to just she, me, her opinions. And then
She, me, her.
with the blackness thing, I've been speaking to my friend about it as well, about compromising the blackness. And I don't know where I sit on the fence of that one, because initially, whoever you date shouldn't compromise your identity. So I don't feel like it's a thing like that. However, I don't know. Like, if I'm being honest, I don't know. Like, we were having a conversation about something, and he was saying, "Oh, X, Y, Z." This guy who was like super pro-black, but then my friend mentioned, "Oh yeah, but his girlfriend's white," and that wasn't really a thing. But then I was like, "Oh, in these times, it's a little tough." And the reason I said it's a little tough because where we are right now with the racial like justice and equality that's going on, the movement that's happening, everyone's so pro-black that they want everything to be black. Now we're shopping black. We're just thinking black, 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 black. So I think for people, when they then see, if you're so pro-black and they see you with a partner who's not black, they may get confused at your message. They shouldn't, but the aesthetics of it may throw them off. So that's why I'm like, for me, it doesn't matter. Like, but I've never been in the situation where I've dated someone out of my race and had to question my blackness. So that's why I'm just kind of on the fence. So yes, that's me. So
it was, you know what it was? No, it's fine. And now that you finished, I have like 3, 4, 5 more things to say, but I'm just going to stick to the thing that I initially wanted to say, because you mentioned black women having a harder time than black men when they date outside their race, right? And I think that's very true. And I think the reasoning for that is because white women are, of course, if we're going by beauty standards, like white women are supposed to be the most desirable. And at the moment, black men are trending. Like I said about the fetishization, like it makes people feel interesting and like trendy when they have, and that's why like I said, pop culture celebrates the most problematic versions of interracial relationships, because they can absolutely be healthy, but the ones that we're like, wow, these are great, they don't seem healthy to me, you know? And I think sometimes when you have a highly melanated person dating someone who isn't, we have been rejected by white culture our whole lives. And so sometimes for highly melanated people to be loved by a white person, it makes them feel like they're one step closer to white acceptance, which, by the way, isn't real. But when it comes to, it's not, just in case people didn't know. And I had a friend who was a black guy and told me about this white girl at uni. He said to him, why don't I ever see you with a white girl? And I said to him, you know that if you purely dated white girls, that person would have never had approached you and been like, why don't I see you with a black girl? Never. And that's because white women are seen as like the creme de la creme of females, which is why even black men expect black women to stay single if they can't get a black man, because they also see themselves as the creme de la creme, you know? So it's like, when I talked last week about the looks that I'd get from just being with white male platonic friends that I wasn't dating, they're just my friends, but people would think that we're dating. And I would never see a black man give that same look or make black men who are dating white women feel as unsafe as they made me feel.
Wow.
Oof, girl, you said too much, man. No. There's so much I want to talk about. I think, let me start with the Harry and Meghan thing. I think what was really interesting is it seemed to bring this idea of interracial relationships, not idea, but interracial relationships more into the public forefront for white people. Like some people seem to be very surprised that people are so aggressive about this, people are racist, and black people are like, we don't know this wasn't going to end well for her. We knew, like, up until the wedding, everyone was celebrating her. The moment she did anything wrong, she wore the wrong colour. You caught a picture of her looking at Kate. Suddenly she hates her. Suddenly it's this. Suddenly she's causing the rift between the brothers. And it's just like, people still have a difficulty with seeing it because they still have a difficulty with black people. As you said, Lawanda, I think it's very, very simple in that sense. When it comes to talking about trading in my black card or my blackness, I think for me, I'm so entrenched in my blackness that wouldn't happen if I had dated somebody who was white or was married to someone who was white. But I think in talking and looking around this subject, I had to realize that there is some internalized racism that I have to really combat within myself, because an article that I was reading, I can't remember which one it was, but it talked about this idea of if you dated somebody who was outside of your race, if you would feel guilty or that you were letting down black people or people in your family or whatever, then there's internalized racism there. And I was just like, I think I would have a big mental hurdle to get over if I dated somebody that wasn't black, because I think within my community, there is still people that feel very uncomfortable about it. Or they'll be like, you're a black woman, you're going places, shouldn't you be with a black man? And it's just like, well, this is the person who I met who loves me and I love them and they accept me and I accept them. So like, and I had to really think about, where did those misconceptions come from? And I think sometimes, I'm not going to talk about who in my family specifically has those misconceptions, but
you better not.
There was a lot of racism growing up, and so they felt safe around being with other black people, dating other black people, because they got so much racism, so much stick from white people. Just the thought of being with someone of that race for them would probably be unheard of or unthinkable. But a lot of it's been shaped by the experiences that they had. But I think as we're living in a different world to some extent, we can see that actually it's possible for you to date someone outside of your race and for them to actually stand with you as an ally in your blackness, and you don't need to dilute it.
Yeah, Sophie, just as you were talking, you just completely reminded me that I did once date outside my race. I don't know how I completely forgot that. I literally forgot that, and it was like a good 6 months of my life. I have no idea how that has... I don't understand how I forgot it. But now,
6 months?
Yeah.
6 months? Are you kidding me?
I don't think that's why I said earlier, I've never dated outside my race and I've had to think about it. I thought to myself, what? Like, actually, I went, oh my gosh. I was confused. But yes, now that my memory's put together and I now remember that I have, dated outside of my race. When I was dating outside my race, did I feel like I was my blackness was compromised in any way? I don't feel like it was compromised in any way, but what I do feel like was, I don't know how much the people around me took it seriously, and I want to explain that. It was just kind of like, what I want to say is like...
So they thought it was just like a trend or something you was going to get over?
A little bit like that. Not even like a trend or whatever. It was just like, you know when when you have a boyfriend, right? But there's a guy that likes you, and he's like, "Oh, how's your little boyfriend?" It was kind of like that. But people don't like me. It's like, "Oh, how's your little boyfriend from blah blah blah?" And you'd be like, "Okay, he's okay." But it was almost
were
like
they white, Anissa?
Who, the person I dated? No. They were Asian. They were from Pakistan. So it's completely left field. And so they're like, "Oh, how's your little?" And it'd be like, you would not be asking that if he was from so and so. Like, so for me, it was like they made a point to bring up his race, and so I felt like there was a little bit of undermining of the relationship. But I didn't feel like within the relationship I had to compromise my blackness at all. And I don't know if that was just because of the individual I was with. So I don't know if it depends on the individual you're with whether you have to compromise your blackness, because I think, I don't know how to explain it. Like, you know, when you get in a relationship, one person is more dominant than the other in regards to their family or the stronger presence or whatever. So one person's culture or lifestyle takes over the other person a little bit more. And so sometimes what you'll find is in the interrelationship...
Sophie's laughing because she's that person.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about? No. Because she's that person. So what
you are trying to get me divorced out here.
No, Sophie, we're not trying.
It was just the smile when she was like...
But like, my end thought to it is like, okay, when Kanye and Kim first got together, like everyone was like, oh, Kanye doesn't do X anymore, Y anymore, like we don't know if he's for black people, blah, 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 because we felt like we or the general public felt like he had assimilated so much into that culture and had almost walked away from his black culture. And I remember he went on a Breakfast Club episode and he said, I don't know why you guys say that I'm not for black people. Like, my wife, she's got a big booty and she does this, like how much for black can get. It was a bit of a stupid comment, but the reality was, his point he was trying to make was, I'm still black, even though I'm with this woman who's not black. And I think, but the perception was that he'd assimilated more into her culture, and so then the perception was then, well, how pro-black is he, because it feels like he's more in her culture than his. So that's where I was going with my point. Yeah, sorry, long train.
I think there's definitely stigma there, and I think it's also important to say that we know, I would assume, as black women, that it's not that there is still a lot of stigma within the black community about it. It's not that we're there with open arms all the time and people are like, come date us. People still do have reservations, and I think that one of the things that I think will help is in terms of, does it depend on the person you're dating? I think 100%. I don't know if you guys saw Love is Blind on Netflix.
Oh, yes.
And, oh my God. What's her name? The one
Lauren and Cameron.
Lauren and Cameron. And yes. Exactly. When I saw Lauren, I'm just like, so if you haven't seen Love is Blind, it's a dating show on Netflix where people had to date each other and never see each other until their wedding day. And literally then they'd see...
until their engagement.
Until their engagement. They'd have to get married. Until their engagement, that's right. And then they'd have to get married or decide not to. And Lauren, when I saw her, I really resonated with her. She's someone who you can definitely see yourself in, as someone who rides within your culture and really owns your blackness. So when she got with this white guy, who I'm just like, he's real cute. He's a fireman who's now making bucks in AI intelligence. I'm not wronging her. But what you saw was a man who was down to be an ally. When he was having those conversations about, I know if we have children, they're going to be seen as black and they're going to be treated differently. I know this and I know that. Everyone was just like,
I love Cameron.
What? That's the sort of person you need to be with if you're interracially dating. Someone who takes on the idea of, somebody who tries to understand how your life is going to be affected by the color of your skin. Now, they won't be able to know 100%, but they have to be willing to learn. Someone who you're dating from any ethnicity and they're different from yours and they're like, I don't see your color, it doesn't matter. Drop that person, because it will matter.
I hate that. Like, you don't see that color nonsense.
Exactly. You want to be in the privacy of your own home, but when you go out in the world, if they're going to treat you differently, you need to a certain level be prepared for that as a couple and know that not everyone's going to accept this love that we have for each other.
100%.
Yeah, you can't even escape the racism in your own home if you have the internet or the television. Like, it's a 24/7 job, you know. And I think sometimes things that I've found is that, in terms of, because I talked earlier about trends, I think the reality of the situation is people who think that they're adopting a little bit of black culture when they have a black partner or something like that, when you are in a relationship with a black person or even in a close friendship with a black person, you get to understand how deeply ingrained into our society and into our culture structural racism is. And there's more to being a black person than just hip hop and trainers. And when you realize that it's not all just like twist outs and, you know what I mean, like a barbecue, it's actually a lot. It's a lot of emotional labor. And sometimes people get in there and they're like, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. So there's a trend that I've been seeing with interracial relationships. And I think a lot of the time when I see people who have dated a black person or who've married a black person and then the relationship ends or then they divorce, what happens after that is then they'll go for a white person afterwards. Because you've seen, and I see that a lot, to be honest, like a lot. If the first marriage was a black person, the second marriage is a white person. And it's because you didn't realize what it was like to be a black person until you were that close to one. And it's a lot to deal with. Like, we talk about it and we laugh about it and we have, you know, all of these topics on the show, but the reality is something that no one can ever prepare you for unless you are experiencing it yourself.
I agree.
I think that's a really good
I didn't know
point.
that.
And I think that really comes to my mind as well when it comes to, like, I haven't dated outside my race, but I did think about it a few years just before I met my husband, actually. I was thinking, you know, maybe I need to branch out a bit.
Are you sure, Sophie? Do you remember everything, Sophie? Because
I'm pretty sure.
Anissa forgot her brown boyfriend.
I'm pretty sure. But something I was really concerned about was having mixed race children. And I just wanted to make sure, like, I was really concerned that would I be able to help them really embrace both sides of their identities. Because I watched this program on BBC and it was like a question called Things You Always Ask, or Questions You Always Ask. So they've done questions people always ask tall people, questions people always ask black people, questions people always ask redheads. And one of the things that they asked was questions you always ask mixed race people. And all these mixed race people were talking about, they were like, are you more black than white? Oh, but you're more black, right? So what side do you identify with more? And they were like, they had to try and work out themselves, like, how do I be both? Because the world wants to put me in one. So if, like Meghan Markle, as we were talking about, she said growing up, she had this big talk about the tick box. And when she was at school, they had to do a tick box of what their families were. And the teacher said, just tick white because you look white. And she said she couldn't in her heart because she was like, her mum is black. And she was like, I can't tick that box. And when she went home and told her family, her dad was just like, if there isn't a box, you create a box. You draw a box and you tick it on what you are. And I've always been really concerned with like making sure that, you know, mixed race children are able to identify with both, because they get a really tough time because people want to put them in a box. Like black people will be like, if you've got a drop of black in you, you're black because you're like, the world is going to treat you like that. But that also denigrates the fact that no, they're not. They have another heritage within them, and that's something they should embrace. But the world doesn't want them to.
It's true. And it's equally as relevant, and it's frustrating that, like you said, people are just going to put you to one side or the other instead of just treating you as you are, which is multifaceted, you know? I think for me, like, my perspective on this topic has changed in literally a matter of days. I'm talking 48 hours, guys.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so what was it before? So, Luanda, what was it before and what is it now? Because I want to know what's been the shift.
I'm sure you guys can guess.
No, we want to know.
You imagine, I'm perplexed.
Our listeners, our viewers don't know. They need to know.
I'm perplexed. I don't understand.
Okay, so before I got
did
to
you meet a guy of a certain colour? Is this what we're talking about? Did I call it?
No. Tell us the details.
No.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I feel like scared admitting this on the internet. But okay, so before 2 days ago, my perspective was really that, you know, I just gave a whole speech about the Black experience and how you'll never really know what it is until you live it. And so for me, I think like I'm open to receiving love from everyone, and I always have been. But in my mind, I always viewed myself as ending up with a Black man, because I'm thinking, if I'm gonna have my life partner as a Black man and I'm a woman, I'm already going to have to teach you what it's like to be a woman in this world. And so I don't want to have to also teach you what it's then like to be a person of color. Like, I need you to meet me halfway. So I had that perspective, and there was even times where there were non-Black people who wanted to like enter into relationships with me, and I had to just be completely honest that I thought it was going to be a waste of my time. However,
I was waiting for you to get to this part, girl.
Girl, you have no chill. You have no chill, and I believe you said it.
I really did. I really did.
You said it. I just know it.
Honestly, get to the part we're waiting for.
Okay, so for me, I stop it, Anissa. I said to him, I was like, I respect you enough to be completely honest about why I don't want to date you, because this is not something that I've just decided. This is something that has been like trial and error. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, only if a crazy person tries the same thing over and over again and expects different results. So why am I going to just do the same thing when clearly some higher force is telling me this ain't it, sister? You know what I mean? So, but now I feel like there's so many layers to us. And whilst like being a woman and being a Black person is at the forefront of my experience, and it always will be because of the outside world, there's so much more to me than just that. And so I don't ever want to close myself off to the opportunity of just finding love, of like giving love and receiving love from whoever it is that wants to like get to know me, because there's more to getting to know me than just like, oh, hey, she's a Black woman. Like, there's so much more than that. So now I guess I feel like I'm more open to anyone.
That's all you had to say now.
So what made the shift though, Luanda? So what was it in the 48 hours that made you
a man?
Please Tell us about this. Okay. Where did you meet him? Did you meet him online? Because you said you gave up on online dating. So did you meet him online?
Stop talking.
Did you meet him on the street?
You guys better stop.
Were you taking out the same Renee Ede book from the library about race? Were you like, oh, there's my boo right there?
She wants to stop talking.
I'm so done. The thing is, though, because I do, like, the way that I speak on the show is really the way that I speak with my friends and my family, my personal life. So if you do want to date me, you need to be the most actively anti-racist, non-black person there is going. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm saying there's just going to be anybody, because, like I said, I've had so many painful experiences in the past that I am still, I'm open, but I'm still put off by it because it still hurts. And so I don't want to repeat those same mistakes. So you do need to be actively anti-racist to be stepping to me. There isn't a guy. There isn't. It was just that I've been hearing, because when we talk about interracial relationships, and most of the times when we talk about most of the issues that affect the black community, we're always talking about them from a black male standpoint, and we really don't always put ourselves in the picture. And so I've just been listening to and reading a lot of black women talking about their interracial relationships, instead of looking at it as the other way around, because I think there's a big difference there. So yeah, I think like that's why I was like so ready to pounce, Anissa, when you were talking about how black women get more stick for it than black men do. Like with black men it's more celebrated, and with black women it's looked at as a betrayal. So I think it was just hearing a lot of black women experiencing things that they didn't deserve to experience because of the people that they love, that has just made me feel like hearing
you speak is making me think about my own train of thought. I feel like, am I open to everyone? I feel like I'm just open to who I think is attractive. Whatever colour they may hit on the rainbow will be what it will be. But my preference is the black men. And so I feel like I'm more likely to, because that's what my preference is. But I'm not closed off if Channing Tatum wants to holler. I'm not closed off. That's what I think.
Channing Tatum, sis, out of all the ones.
Channing is
all the ones you could have shouted out. Channing Tatum.
Channing is the one
Channing. My husband Channing. I'm done with you. I'm not gonna lie, but I struggled with it because in my mind I think that true love is understanding, and because I don't believe that anyone who isn't black can understand the black experience, I'm like, how can you truly love me if you can't understand me? But yeah, I'm learning, I'm growing. It's a process.
It's all a process. Iteration.
Yeah, we are here to grow together. We're here to grow together.
So we are at the halfway point of our show. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and make sure to give us a thumbs up. If you are listening via the podcast, don't forget to follow us as well to keep up to date with all of our upcoming episodes. So far we have talked about interracial relationships in the UK and whether being in one, you have to kind of compromise your blackness a little bit. And we've also talked about mental health in the black community, why there's more of it and why there's such a taboo when we try to talk about it. So now I kind of want to stay on the theme of relationships and dating, but I wanted to ask you, are you more attracted to the bad boy or the nice guy? And do we think that nice guys finish last?
My spidey senses are tingling. I don't know if I really believe in the whole notion of the good guy and the bad guy thing. And I know that sounds crazy, but it doesn't
sound crazy.
Yeah, I just don't believe in it personally. I just don't believe in it. Like, I just want to date whoever I'm attracted to, like, period. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like, though, growing up, I was made to feel that the guys who I weren't attracted to were nice guys. And so, like, when I watched TV shows, and so they were like, the men that were good for you didn't look as good, or they weren't as desirable. So in my mind, it would have been like, okay, well, the man that's good for me isn't desirable, so why would I want him? That's what I think. Watching Disney Channel, I'm telling you, this is what they put in my mind. And so then it was like, but the guy who was desirable had all these toxic traits. And I do think for a lot of people that follows through into adulthood, that they like maybe men that have toxic traits because that's seen as more desirable. But for me, I think life and time and real world application has shown me that men who can treat you well still look just as good, sometimes even better, than the men that have toxic traits. So I don't feel like I need to think about your character to see if you're a nice guy or if you're a bad guy. Do you look good to me? Yes or no? Are you a good person? Yes or no? Because I can't be with a man that looks good and is talking to me crazy, because then we're going to have a real problem. So so by theory, then I'd be with a nice guy. But for me, I don't believe in the nice bad guy. It's just, you're just a guy. I don't know if that makes sense.
What? Girl, I feel like there are nice guys and there are bad guys. Or maybe it's because I've just dated some of them. So I think they're definitely out there. But I think for me, you have to think about how bad is bad. Do you mean like he's a drug dealer bad? Or do you mean that he just doesn't know how to treat women bad? Because there's a scale. There's a scale of bad guys.
All of that bad sits under bad. I think all of that bad sits under bad.
All of it sits under bad? Okay.
Yes.
So I've dated bad guys, and I think for me, I think for women, they bring a certain level of excitement, because you feel like it's kind of, you don't know what's going to happen, because literally they're not really that reliable with you. And it's kind of like the thrill of the chase, maybe like what's going to happen. You have these dramatic highs and lows, and it feels like it's chemistry or it's just exciting, but it's actually not very good traits. And you're really training yourself to be in a toxic situation. Like, and sometimes I feel like I get caught out. Like, I don't know if that's the case, because I want to think on some level you're attracting them. If you keep dating them, you're attracting them. But like, I've dated some guys who I feel like they were like unknown bad guys. Like, you feel like they were good, and then you see, you're like, what? You were really a bad guy? I didn't see that coming. Like, I went on this course. It was a long course, so it wasn't like a day course. It was over a few months. And on this course, I'm not going to tell you who it was. There was a male black influencer who has a lot of followers, and he and I were in the same class. Now, we went home together on the tube because we was going in the same direction, and we just vibed together. Like, honestly, we just vibed together. There's lots of banter, there was lots of jokes, and I was trying to work out, like, is he interested in me? Like, he asked for my Instagram, and like, he seemed like at the end of the course, every time he'd wait for me, we'd always wait for each other. It got to the point that people in the course were like, something's going on between you two. And I'm just like, no, like, we're literally, nothing's going on. They were like, you're lying. I'm like, no, we're just friends. But we just hang out together because we just clicked. So then I spoke to one of my male friends, and I said to him, how should I tell if this guy likes me? Like, how am I gonna, like, what do I say? And he was just like, just try and drop an idea for a date. He was like, just talk about, have you been to that restaurant and blah, 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 or talk about something and see if he kind of picks it up. I was like, okay. So the next time we met up, I did that. And I was just kind of like, okay, so I fed in that little thing. He was like, yeah, I'd really love to go there. I'd really love to go to that museum. That sounds really good. We should do it. And I was just like, okay. I am not kidding you. About 12 hours later, I saw him with his influencer girlfriend on his Instagram account, declaring their love literally at the firework display in London. And I was just like, what? And Tutu's, when we still went on our course, he was still really friendly. Those long lingering hugs goodbye with his hand on the small of my back. And I was just like, you're a bad guy? Like, what happened? So some of them are just masquerading, guys. I'm telling you.
Deceivers.
See, like, I'm kind of with Anissa when I don't know if I'd like put people in the like bad guy, good guy categories. And I also reject the idea that nice guys finish last, because what that sounds like to me is a guy feeling entitled to a woman, presenting her with a fake friendship and not receiving sex, and then getting mad about it. That's how it sounds to me.
You always got to take it down that route.
You know that it is, though. Like, you thought you could exchange kindness for someone's vagina, and now you're upset because you didn't. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what do you mean you finished last? Shouldn't you just be nice to people because you want to be nice to them instead of you feel like you want to get something from them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just like, and then so it's like, so then they look at someone else that you'll be with and be like, oh, but that guy, but I did this, and I'm like, but I'm me, and I'm choosing who I'm paying attention to, and just because you held the door open, so it's just frustrating. It's frustrating for me. I guess like I've never really been heavily attracted to the whole bad boy thing because most of them to me seem like idiots, and that's just
fair enough.
It's just because you don't seem emotionally mature, and when you're not, like, how are we supposed to have a conversation? Like, how are we supposed to actually talk about something interesting or something moving to you or something real when you think that the best thing that you can do is like treat them mean to keep them keen. And I dated a guy when I was young and stupid who, when I was younger and stupider,
I mean, I was gonna ask how young is young. I was like, how young is young?
18 and he was like the age that I am now. So he was, you know, when people try to give you that kind of like backhanded compliment, that make you feel insecure but also make you feel attached to them. So he said something like, oh my gosh, the day that you walked in, I'll just call them person A, me and person A noticed you, and I was saying, oh, isn't she so attractive? And then person A was like, nah, I'm not really into black girls, but I was like, nah, she's beautiful. And I'm like, you really trying it. You really trying it. You really trying the mind games on me here. Like, what part of that story could you have cut out? Tell me. Tell me what you could. Tell me what you could have left off the table.
I saw you and you looked really attractive. That's all you have to say.
You don't have to tell the story at all. Just say, girl, you look good today. That's all you have to say.
The end.
Exactly.
That is, do you know what? As we've been thinking about it more, I don't believe in the good guy, bad guy thing. But when I think about it, then I guess there would be, if I look back my history, there would be people that you may say necessarily was a bad guy and people that were necessarily were good guys. But I think for me, what I get the reason why some people like this whole bad guy thing is because sometimes bad guys, you know, they're like hyper masculine, you know, very alpha male, very strong, confident, domineering, and women
charming, charismatic.
Exactly. And women like confident, outgoing men. I mean, most women like confident, outgoing men. And so maybe people associate that more with the bad guy character. But when I look back on my life, bad guy, good guy, like they're all confident and outgoing. Like I like super alpha male men. Like I like super alpha male men. So whether you're a good guy or a bad guy really doesn't fall into it. As long as you know how to hold your own as a man, then all is well. Yeah. Have I dated men who aren't super alpha male? Yes. And I just found it just didn't work for me. And so for some people, that's how they may feel about nice guys. It doesn't work for them because they may not have that masculine energy. But for me, if you want to chase the bad guy, it's always a chase. It's like a game of It. The chase continues. Then there's not a second level of It where the chase stops and everyone is just sitting there. Do you know what I mean? It just keeps going and going and going. And there is no peace when you are at war in your relationship. Like, I don't want chase. I don't want toxicity. I don't want the bad guy. How about I have the peace in that you are consistent and that you are reliable and you are the man that you said you are. So if that's more associated with nice guys, then I guess nice guys are for me and they ain't finishing last over here.
But that's the thing though. I have to ask, like, quickly, Anissa, like, do you feel like those were traits you were looking for when you were younger though? Because my thing is, as I've gotten older, I'm just like, you being reliable and dependable and supportive is sexy as hell. But when I was younger, I wasn't even thinking about, can he be someone I can rely on? I wasn't even thinking. I'm like, is he cute? Does he dress well? Like,
it wasn't
can I have banter with him?
It wasn't as an evolved thought as, oh, I need you to be consistent. But it would be things like, if I'm speaking to you today at a certain time, then I'd expect maybe that we would continue speaking. If we've established I hope that we'd established patterns. So it wouldn't be like, I hear from you 1 week and then 3 weeks later I hear from you. I'd like a man that had some sort of pattern to the life of where, okay, if we speak twice a week, then we speak twice a week. We speak 3 times a week, 3 times a week. I liked a man that kept his word, even from when I was young. I don't like deceivers and liars and manipulators. They've never been for me, honey, not even when I was 5 on the playground. I need you to think about what it is that you want. I like a man that holds his word. I really do, even when I was younger. Yeah. And obviously looks cute.
This is the thing that's interesting, because in terms of, like, I still believe that there are bad guys and nice guys, and I'm not saying that in terms of they're that forever, but I've never dated a bad guy or seen a bad guy, let's say quote unquote, that didn't have some other issues going on in their life, and that's because the reason why they were, that's been my personal experience. But I was reading in like Good Housekeeping, and it was talking about, they were trying to take this from a scientific perspective, and I'm like, this is foolishness, but I want to see what you guys think. They were saying the reason why women are attracted to bad guys is because we like hypermasculine men, but also because we sense that literally on an anatomy level, on a biological level, that their sperm will have better quality if they're more masculine. Therefore, that's why women are attracted to it.
Okay, so
Look, Luanda, that was on my face. When I read it, I was just like...
The thing is with me, though, like we said earlier, people think that less emotions and less emotional expression equates to strength. And people think strength equates to masculinity. But for me, the more open, the more honest you are, the more true to yourself you are, the more of a man you are to me, the more of a human being you are to me. So I don't care about, like, you know, most traits that people like find attractive, because the thing that I want most is like honesty and openness. And if I'm speaking to someone, because I'm very like upfront, and you don't have to be as upfront as I am, but I need you to be comfortable enough to actually have a real conversation with me instead of talking about airy fairy things or telling me how much you press in the gym. Like, I don't care. And I think a lot of the times the stereotypical bad guys have that closed off mindset, where it's like, oh, he's so hard to read, he's like, what's the like strong and mysterious, is that the mysterious kind of thing, and then so like people are drawn to them because they have the idea in their head that that's what a real man is supposed to be like, whereas someone who is a bit more expressive, they're seen as feminine, and like feminine apparently according to society is the worst thing that a man could ever be considered as.
Do you know what?
I don't. This is one of the.
Sorry, I was thinking just about your whole attracted to the sperm thing. Initially, I was like, absolutely not. Am I meeting you thinking about your little sperm? But
they're saying subconsciously.
Yes, but I don't know. But yeah, and then that's what I have to think about is subconsciously, because I'm thinking, because you know they say that like men are attracted to women whose skin look a bit more supple and like the hips are a little bit wider. They're saying subconsciously because it looks like you're ready to give birth or whatever, like to have kids. Like, so they like that kind of woman. So I'm thinking, well, maybe subconsciously then, maybe that's why. So my mind is, so I have no answer to your question about that, Sophie. Just, it made me think.
To be honest, it made me think, but I think in terms of this whole thing about, like, because Nisa, you were talking earlier about the guys that we see in the media, and I think a lot of the guys that we see in films and TV, celebrities, are quote unquote bad guys. They're guys who have a lot of girlfriends, or they might get accused of cheating, or in a film, it's this guy who's kind of mysterious, you can't pin him down, but let's say 50 Shades of Grey, but by the end of it, she was what he was missing, and she's the thing that makes him change his life around. And I think a lot of women have adopted that and actually believe that in real life. And my thing is that the majority of us are the rule. You're trying to be the exception, and the point is we're not the exception. They act like that because that's just how they are. And you being in their life, they're not a project. And that's what Good Housekeeping talks about. Some people might feel like it's a project for them to work on. I'm just like, he needs to work on himself. I am not here to try and get you to the level that you need to be. But
Speak
I
on
can say
it
this as well, because my husband is a good guy. I don't know if there's a difference between a nice guy or a good guy, but he's one and the same. He's both. But when I first started dating him, because I hadn't really dated guys who were open and transparent and consistent all of the time and did what they say they were going to do, I remember going out to lunch with my friend and saying to her, I don't know if he's going to work. Like, he's really nice. Like, I think he's just too nice. And my friend was like, do you know what it is? She was like, there's no drama. Like, what you're used to is the highs and the lows, and you don't know where you stand, and you're going after them, and what does it mean, and and she was just like, and when you have a guy that's consistent, it can seem like it's boring. Like, you know what he's going to do. He's telling you what he's going to do. He's being consistent. She went, you just have to get used to it. And I think that's sometimes why nice guys might finish last, because women are trying to think, well, why aren't I, wondering where he's going to be, or why isn't he like, you don't have any of that with a guy who's consistent, but you begin to realize actually that's how it should be. And I realized that there was actually an issue with me.
I was about to say that, Sophie, not you, but just women in general creating drama.
Me too. I was used to toxic traits. I'm going to own it, because I want people to know I was used to toxic traits and I wasn't ready for that. And thank goodness I had somebody who was willing to stay with me while I processed actually what I was looking for and what I wanted wasn't actually good for me, and Jesus had better.
And I'm telling you, it's not healthy to it's just not healthy to function in that kind of way. And I understand the whole drama thing, because I always hear that, oh, he's boring. Like, that is a line that is used a lot. And I think it speaks more to the person who's saying it versus the person who is quote unquote boring. And so that's something you know, that's a whole piece. But I do agree with you, Sophie, about sometimes, you know, people like a project or want to feel so special about themselves that I'm the one who changed him. He changed for me. And I helped him. I'm so perplexed at this idea. Never in my life do I want to pick a man up like a fixer-up project. I am not Bob the Builder. Can we fix it? No, I can't. I don't want to. I would like you to come fully made and well, okay? Because I'm fully made and well. So this perplexes me when I'm perplexed. I can't.
To be fair, Sophie, when you started talking about the article that you had read and said, oh, women are attracted to these type of men because, and then you started talking about the sperm thing, I actually thought you were heading in the direction of saying we're attracted to broken men because we want to fix them and we want to mother them back to health. You know, and I think it's such, like you said,
like I was saying, Luanda, I wish.
The sperm thing is interesting, though. I really want to go read that.
It is interesting. It's weird, but I think it's unhealthy of us to think that we need to, like you said, Anissa, be Bob the Builder when we don't. We can be fully formed and meet someone on the same level as us. And the thing that I'm always looking for is someone to grow with. Like, you don't have to be the person who I think I'm going to be when I'm ready to be married. Like, you just have to be where I am now, as long as we're heading in the same direction. And that 100%. Goes for all of the relationships in my life, platonic, romantic, or whatever else is in between. Because if we're not heading in the same direction, then we how's that going to work? Let me know. How's it going to work?
I 100% agree with you. And I think the nice guys are looking better as well. Not to say that, but what I'm saying is that everyone will quote unquote say that Sierra's husband is a nice guy. No one will say that Russell Wilson is this monster. No one will ever say he's a bad guy. And Russell's really good looking on the eye. So I think this whole nice guy being less desirable thing is, I don't know if I felt that one.
I felt that one. She's got
But like you said, I feel like nice guys get a bad time for being good guys, for being nice and trustworthy and honest. And that's the only thing that's going to help you in a long-term relationship. Long-term with some bad guy who you don't know where you stand. There's too much tiring. It's
too much headache, man. Who wants the drama?
Yeah.
Who?
For real. Don't need it.
That's when we've settled on the nice guys versus good guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching episode 12 of Ethnically Speaking. We've loved every minute. And if you have to, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Let's keep the conversation going. What do you think about nice guys, and do you think they always finish last? Make sure you put it in the comments below. For a link of everything we've spoken about today, you can head over to our website, unitedmelaningroup.com/ES0012. There is a link in the description below. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. We'll be back here same time, same place next week. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and stay alert.